A really good radio show. I really am excited to have you on, Shantelle, and thank you so much for joining us, Shantelle Thompson.
Hey everyone, morning from Lachi and our neighbours, the Barkindji country, which is my mob, or one of my mobs, I should say.
I didn't know whether you moved closer to your mob's home or not, but that's
I'm
cool.
across the river.
Oh yeah, just over the road.
Pretty much.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us this morning. How are you?
I am feeling a bit tired. It's the end of the year. It's been a massive year, and COVID, just my own life in general, and just learning to surrender to things. So my body's tired, my mind is tired, but my soul just feels at peace, like I'm exactly where I need to be. And I'm currently 5 months pregnant, look like I'm ready to give birth. This is one very big mother. So it's very natural that I feel tired as I'm nurturing a new life.
Congratulations. I only just found out this in the last few weeks when you posted something, so that's really exciting.
Yeah, I took Jiu Jitsu off the plate and I decided to add in a baby because I don't already do enough. But we just made the decision that Jiu Jitsu is off the table for probably about a year or two, and we've always wanted to grow our family, so we took the opportunity while it was there.
Cool. Oh, nice. And so yeah, you talk about this year being maybe tiring, but also current situation. Let's go to now. Pregnancy's not this isn't a new thing for you.
No.
You've got a few kids in the brood.
So I've got a almost 14-year-old daughter. I've got 11-year-old twins. I've got a kinship daughter of my niece. This baba, plus I've had a miscarriage before. So and my daughter was a twin. So technically this is 1, 3, 5, 6. This will be number 7.
Wow. Do you just love it? Do you love kids? Or do you just kind of fall into it and you're like, you know what, this is cool. I love it anyway. So here we go.
I think if I'm being completely honest, I've always been a nurturer, but I've also always been driven by ambition and wanting to make a difference in the world. But as I get older, I'm wanting to use the wisdom of not being spread too thin. So I want to have impact in the world, but I also want to be able to be there for my kids, but not just for them, for myself as well. Because as I said to my partner, I said, our kids will always have us, but we won't always have our babies. So the thing that balances it out for me is that my partner is an amazing home parent, nurturing person who gives me the space and permission and the support to be the woman that I am in all my angles. And there's support from both sides. So I'm the main income earner, and he keeps the solid foundations at home. And without him and the support of my kids, I couldn't be who I am today or do the things that I do, or even the stuff that's coming, because I think what I've done before is only going to scratch the surface of what I do in the next 10 to 15 years.
Have you always had that determination and, I guess, bigger picture view? Or is it something more that you've got the momentum lately? Or, where did you develop these things like this ain't enough for me, I'm going more, even though the world tells me I'm not meant to be going into these paths?
I think that's something that's always been with me, like that warrior heart and that courage is something that I was born with. It's something that I was gifted from my ancestors. And the more I sit on country and the more I reflect, the more I'm at peace with the struggles that I've had, the struggles that I know are going to come. And I think that the struggles that I have faced and will face are gifts from the ancestors, because they're mine to live through, to unpack, to move through, so that the wisdom and the learnings and the knowledge and the experience that I get from those experiences, I can then gift to others, and I can bring them on the journey. So often in my situation, I'm often the first. I was the first in my family to finish year 12, to go to university, to start a business, and I'm sick of being the first. But in order to break through those barriers, but the more older I get and the more time I take to sit with myself, to sit on country, I realize that I don't need to have it all figured out. If I've got this calling, I trust that the ancestors are calling me there for a reason. And Uncle Mark Rose calls it our ancestral mandate. He says, whatever you're being called to do and whatever struggles you're facing have been given to you specifically by the ancestors, because that's your ancestral calling or ancestral mandate. In the Western world, they'd call it your purpose. But that's very ego driven. It's very much about what does the self want. Whereas the more I sit and trust with this, it's like, hold on, everything I've done has always been born out of a situation that I could no longer bear. And that the change and the fear of change was not as great as the fear of staying the same.
Yeah. It's great to hear. I'm just loving having First Nations people speak on this show, and there's this continuing theme, which is teaching the Western world that there is an ancestral connection that's really powerful, and a lot of the issues, or I guess the barriers with Indigenous people, are that they're not connected to that ancestral line. And it's beautiful to know that you're around country. And I wanted to talk a little bit. I've wrote in your bio, so anyone that's written the bio knows that you had postnatal depression, or you had. I've never really tackled this with you in conversation, and I haven't done a lot of digging around. I'm only probably a very naive external bystander of what postnatal depression is, more than just it being a really tough time post having a baby. Tell us a little bit about your experience with it, and when your introduction to it, and how you dealt with it, and where you.
I think my experience with postnatal depression or postpartum depression, it has different names now, was deep, and it took me to the very depths of my own darkness, in that I, now knowing what I now know, I did have the start of postnatal depression, or with my daughter, my eldest daughter. And postnatal depression or postpartum depression can actually happen while you're pregnant. It can happen after the birth, and it can even happen right up until 2 years post baby.
Right.
So for me, I think I was still in it a little bit, because I'd never had, the world was not safe for me to take off my armor and to sit down and be supported to do any healing work at that time. I'm the third eldest of 18 siblings. My parents had their own struggles, so I've always been the caretaker and the vulnerability. My nan was always there for me, and I've always had like connection to country and stuff, but there was always this need to keep going and to always kind of be the nurturer or the protector. So after the birth of my twins in 2009, like we were living in poverty. We had no money. We were living with family, so we had a roof over our head and stuff like that, but that was about the extent of our income. My partner was working fruit picking, but was not getting the work, wasn't getting paid right. So we were actually living off country. There was so many extenuating circumstances that led to the depth of my depression. So it wasn't just the birth of my twins. But what happened with my twins, they were the tipping point for the entire trauma that I had not only lived through, but my intergenerational trauma as well. There's only so much that the body can bear. And I think with the birth of my twins came the birth of my trauma. And because I didn't have the skill sets, the support, or the acknowledgement of what was to come with that, I kept things buried inside. So what happened, I started to see images of hurting my children. Now, this is very triggering for people. It can be very uncomfortable, but I need to speak the truth, because there are people out there who have killed their children because they're unable to speak. And I was one of those people who could have done that. So I started to have very graphic images of throwing my children at the wall. And I couldn't tell anyone because of our history with the stolen generation, my own history. I was too scared to speak up and go, I'm going to lose my kids. No one's going to understand. So it was this fear and self-preservation, but I started to get more and more detached from my feelings. Everything was grey. I was just going through the motions. I was breastfeeding 2 children. My oldest was only three and a bit. And we were living with my dad, my 2 siblings. George was working. And then one night it all accumulated into a point where my daughter hadn't slept. I just needed some space. I didn't know how to ask for that. And I ended up going from holding my daughter to squeezing her. And it wasn't until her cries changed from discomfort to pain that I realized what I was doing. I had started to act out those feelings. And it was at that exact point that my husband walked through the door. And if he hadn't have walked through the door at that point, I don't know what would have happened. I know that I was capable of hurting my children or myself or all of us. But basically, long story short, after that, I took off with the keys. I went to the doctor's office and I waited 5 hours to see a GP. No one knew where I was, no mobile, no nothing. She was the first person I told. And the first thing out of her mouth was, I noticed on your file you're of Indigenous heritage. I believe we should call Child Protection to do a welfare check on your kids and you should spend time in a mental health facility.
Wow.
And the reason I can talk about this and sit with it without appearing all broken, I've done my work in this space. I have, and I had a little bit of fear early in my pregnancy that I would fall sick again. But I know I have the support to handle it if I do. The sickness isn't the issue. It's my ability to ask for help and to accept help as well, because there's one thing to be sick, but there's another to be able to ask for help and take that on.
It's probably the second or third time I've heard this part of your life, and I don't know why. I'm not addicted to it, but I love knowing that we're giving this public air, because I think we can be a little bit public and think we're kind of helping the world by talking about stuff, but we'd actually kind of talk about a quarter of the problem, and we still leave a little. Like, the thing about you, Shantelle, is like it's the whole package that you like. You're not going, oh, look, I had a few rough moments there post-birth, but, you know, here I am today and I've had a really great time. It's like, I love it that you're here today, and it's pretty brave talking about those things.
It's necessary, Troy. It's necessary. And I have been gifted a voice and the strength and the capacity to be able to handle any judgment that comes at me for what I share. And even if it's only one person who hears this or connects with it or can share it with someone else, to go, it is possible to overcome this. And if anything, with this adversity and this trauma, my true healing came about. And yes, it was traumatic, and I had to go to the very depths of darkness to understand what I'm capable of in that darkness. But because of that, I can now stand strong and tall, and my kids know this story. It's not hard to share the story with others. What has been hard is my children sitting in the room and my little girl that I actually hurt that night, her making that connection and going, Namika, was that me that you did that to? And sitting, now that broke my heart a couple of years ago, knowing that she's sitting there knowing that her mother was so sick that she was capable of hurting her. Now that, as you can see, that triggers me. I don't care what other people think of me, because it's more important to help people by sharing stories out loud than it is to sit in fear of judgment. But I'm capable of that.
I love you, Shantelle. You're a champion.
Thank you.
Let's talk about a little bit of your champion activities. What led to Jiu Jitsu? What was the decision? Is that another medication in a way?
Jiu Jitsu, literally, I found Jiu Jitsu when I was 19 because I was another form of trauma behavior. I was going out night clubbing and I'd start punching on with guys, not women, guys. If guys, especially young guys, wouldn't take no for an answer, I'd make them take no for an answer, especially if it was directed at other women. I found pleasure in putting my fist in other people's faces. Like, there was this, it gave me a sense of power, and like that I can't even explain the feeling that I got with the satisfaction and the power that I felt when I put my fist into someone else's face. But I was at risk of either hurting someone, but more seriously than what I already did, or getting hurt. And I got introduced to martial arts, and it was the first time that I found a space that I could channel all of that energy, and I had permission to do it. But that's actually where I met my partner as well. So when I first started jiu-jitsu and martial arts, it was very much this playful thing and going, oh, I could do this. I wanted to be an MMA fighter. So I've never actually shared this with anyone, but just before I fell pregnant with my oldest girl, I had plans to move to Melbourne to finish my teaching degree. I was going to become a stripper to support my career, and I was going to train to be an MMA fighter. And
why have you taken this long to share all this? Why?
No one's ever really asked about the story's always been about the postnatal depression and all of that. But the birth of the Barkindji Warrior has been decades in the making. She wasn't just born with the birth of my daughter and the trauma, the depression. It was, but after my twins, my partner sat me down, and when I finally told him and my sister, the biggest thing I remember on their faces is relief. That because I had come through, someone could finally help me, but they didn't know how to help me until I was ready to ask for the help. And in that conversation, first thing I said was, I don't want to do medication, because we had family members who had addiction issues. I knew the complexity, and that frightened me. So George was like, okay, well, how about we go back to training, we start jiu-jitsu again, you go back to work and your studies, and I'll stay home and look after the kids. And I literally started jiu-jitsu as a form of physical and emotional therapy. And in those early months, it was very much a way of trying to find my way out of the darkness and to create space between the darkness and my reaction to the darkness. And that was literally the starting point. And then every stage or every chapter after that was just a calling to go, what does the next step look like? Like what's the possibility?
Yeah. But yeah, jiu-jitsu's got more than just showing physical strength. What was that part like for you? And for, I've never tried jiu-jitsu to any level actually, but to that mental game, because people 50 kilos less than you can do some serious damage. And you all of a sudden realise this ain't just a venting session. This is a thinking game.
So for me, it's very different. My partner George is very strategic, very clever in that, and I hate him. I've bitten him in training. Like, I've gotten that wild with him because he's that much better than me. Like, I literally, and this wasn't like 10 years ago. This was only a few years ago. Elite training, already a world champion, and I got that wild with him. I bit him. Like,
that wasn't part of the jiu-jitsu method?
Oh no. He had his leg over my face, and I couldn't get it off, and I couldn't breathe, and I didn't want to tap, so I bit him instead, and I swallowed him. And I stormed off into the toilets crying, and my coach is like, what is this girl doing? Like, and all my teammates look too frightened to look at me. So the thing is that strategy is definitely a part of it, but that's not my game. So I'm very much a bull in a china shop when I'm in jiu-jitsu. Right. I get a direction in my head. Now, that worked for me in the past, but it's not working for me now at a more elite level. So I'm entering a whole new phase. But in the past, yes, strategy and technique is a part of it. But for me, I think when I'm learning, but when I'm rolling, or I just let my body go, I feel things. And it's very much, if you're being controlled by your feelings, in terms of like, if you go into training angry and that's how you train, if you're controlled by it rather than channeling it, it very much allows your opponent control over you. So there's this intellectual side of it, there's this emotional side of it, but the body, a lot of people talk about mindset. I talk about heart set. The body holds an intelligence that the mind has not caught up with and never can. And in trauma, we say that the body bears the trauma. So for being able to get out of my head and sink back into my body and trust that my body knows something is the most powerful space I can be in.
How do you grab all this and package it into what you're doing now? And I know you're developing and currently kind of using your time now to present to others, inspire other women. Where do you start with such a big history, a long history, and something that you are super aware of? How do you micro it down into and talk about a little bit about the work you do now?
I go to the people. I go, what do the people need from me? So I've struggled the last 4 or 5 years in business. So basically, this is the accumulation of my jiu-jitsu efforts.
They are some heavy sounding medals. I feel so inferior with my plastic trophies. They're like, they're real medals.
I'll share something. When I didn't make the games, the Commonwealth Games, I lost to my teammate, and I qualified for the shadow team. We went to the Commonwealth Games as spectators, and when I saw the Commonwealth Games medals that are like this big, I was like, in my head, my ego was like, because I was so hurt, was like, my World Championships medals make those look like shit anyway. And mind you, these medals were designed by a First Nations woman from Stradbroke Island.
Oh, right.
Afterwards, I was like, Shan, how egotistical can you be? But for me, in 2016, I was working for a small organisation called Connecting Home, and I was being a support worker for members of the Stolen Generation and their descendants. But the CEO of the organisation said, Shan, you have to make a choice between working here or pursuing your jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, because we don't have the space to support your career. So what people don't know or see, people look at me and they go, oh, she's always busy, she's away from her kids and that. I have had to fight every single step of the way to make this dream possible. My family and I have funded 90% of our, like my partner's also a jiu-jitsu person. He's competed internationally. So for the last 6-7 years, I've worked, I've studied every year, I've looked for awards, I've volunteered in the community while training 6 days a week for minimum 4 hours a day, morning and night shifts, while taking care of my kids and making sure my kids stay connected to country, with no corporate support or anything like that in the past, up until like some awards and grants that came with some cash. So everything has been, I'm self-made with the strength of my ancestors, and going, okay, the Western world doesn't value or support what I do. I have to find a way, because this is valuable enough for me to put it through. And so I basically said, okay, I'm going to leave my job. And he's like, thank God. I always get fired, or I quit, because I'm a terrible employee. I'm fantastic working with people, but I hate working for people. And he said, good, go follow your dreams. I don't know how you're going to do it, but I wish you all the best. And if I know anyone, I know that you can make this happen. And so I started my business, and actually it was the Kurungamaji Institute, the Indigenous leadership section of Richmond Football Club, that gave me my first paid gig. They're like, Shane, come and facilitate one of your sessions. So funnily enough, in 2013, when 2013, when we left Mildura, I wanted to maintain my connection to home. I wanted to contribute, because I was like, I'm going away to learn stuff, but I want to bring whatever I learn home. And I wanted my kids to maintain a strong connection to country and family. So every school holidays, we would come home anyway. So I started thinking about it. What is it that I want to help kids do? I want to help kids grow. So I went to my one of our language elders and in the Barkindji Nation, and I said, what's a word for grow or growing? And he gifted me Kilalaana. And Kilalaana means growing. So that became the name of our program. And the idea was to have a role model who was doing something. It wasn't just talking to kids saying you can be and do anything you want. I could talk about the struggles that I was living through at that time. So if the kids sit there and go, oh, I'll give you attitude, and go, I'll give you lip, and go, oh, what would you know? It's like, well, come on, let's find out. Come and sit with Arnie and let's find out. You may have a feed with them, and then you'd sit in.
I can't hear you for some reason.
That's how hasn't been West to come up with one product, one niche market. And I struggled with that. And anytime I have a physical reaction to something, I have to listen to that, because my body's aware of something that my mind hasn't caught up with yet. And for me, that's the way, my ancestors' way of communicating with me, or just one way. And I've struggled to articulate how I do business, but it's about people connecting with what I have to offer, and then between the two parties we negotiate what that looks like, as opposed to me telling the world, this is what I have, this is what you need. And I don't agree with other people when they say, oh, I change lives. Bullshit. I don't change anyone's life. You have to change your life. But I can create the space, the belief, the evidence, the support, whatever it is, for you to step into that space so you can change your own life. And that's kind of what I do, whether it's through story. So right now, I have a business where I have two businesses. I have Shantelle Thompson, which is the brand of the Barkindji Warrior, and it's the storytelling. It's that space. It's motivational speaking, inspiration. But then I have Kilalaana, which is trauma-informed self-development, and And it's about self-development. It's about self-leadership, because a lot of leadership courses are about how do you be a better leader for others. But when do we get thought and time to how do we be better leaders for ourselves? How do we show up? So basically in that space, I run workshops. I'm running a girls program, and I'm really excited that in the next few weeks, I'll be letting some news loose that I'm going to have the capacity to run a girls program for 12 months. And it's going to be around empowering these young women to find their warrior heart and to find their truth and be able to have the skills, the support and the capacity to stand in their truth. But then I match that with corporate services of thought leadership around courage, resilience, the warrior within. So that's the kind of two spaces that I work in, is the storytelling and grassroots community work with youth and women mainly, and then corporate organizations, because the corporate work that I do can fund the Grass Nations work that I do.
Yeah. Have you got a website? Where can I link people to, or is it just through your
I have a website, but it's not very, it doesn't articulate very well what I'm doing, and I'm in the processes of trying to bring all of that together. But people can just...
I don't know. Can you hear me? It sounds like she's in water. It's really weird. There's some audio thing going on. Can you hear anything? You can't hear me? That is so weird. Hang on a sec. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
oh,
I can hear you now.
We missed that last 15 seconds.
I don't really have, so the website needs to be updated with the knowledge, but for professional things, people can find me on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah, cool.
And then for any other kind of socials or following the journey, I'm on Instagram and Facebook mainly.
I love it. And it's so good. I didn't deliberately know. Oh, you can't hear me? That's weird. Can you still not hear me?
No.
It's low. That's so weird. There's something going on with Hang There we go. Can you hear me now? You can't hear me now. That's weird. That is so weird. Let me hang up the meeting and I'll quickly and come back in. That is Shantelle Thompson. I'm going to get her back because I wanted to wrap this up. She's got so much great stuff to say. I don't know what's going on with the interview. But Shantelle Thompson, please find her at her LinkedIn page. I'm going to bring it up right now. You can find in some really good stuff on LinkedIn, but she's got a brilliant Facebook page too. Let me just try this again. It's so weird. It's spacking out. It's so interesting. Can you see all this? Everyone can see all this as we're going. You can see live. You can see live some of the tech stuff that I've got. Oh, good morning, Alice. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me now, Shantelle?
Yes, perfect.
I don't know what's going on. It's something got to do with Zoom. Zoom just went all... It actually sounded like someone was trying to hack into the call. I could hear like someone getting ready for work or something. It was really weird. The reason why I wanted to come back is because I wanted people to not miss that information. So you can go to Chantelle's LinkedIn. I love the name, by the way. Kilalaana, is it?
Kilalaana.
How do you spell it?
K-I-I.
Yeah.
L-A.
Yeah.
L-A-N-A. So soon I will have so my website is inspired by LeBron James, who has 4 sections to his website. He has the man, the philanthropist, the athlete, and the businessman. And I was like, that's me. It's the woman, it's the athlete, it's the philanthropist, and it's the businesswoman. And that's what I love, because our culture is never just one thing, and I'm not just one thing. So I really struggle to communicate that. So the website will soon have Kilalaana and all the stuff that I do, all my philanthropy stuff. So within the next 5 years, I'll be launching the Warrior Dreaming Foundation, which will be self-funded by the success of my business. So that's what I'm looking at doing, is creating 2 profitable businesses that will then use the profits of that to support the Kilalaana Foundation. Plus, we'll be setting up an academy in the Mallee region, which will be around mentoring, scholarships, and programs to support young women to begin with, to step into their power and to be able to be supported to grow that space. So I have to say that picture behind you has just made my heart feel so full and powerful, and it has just reminded me and grounded me in everything I'm doing right now and why it's so worth it. And for me, nurturing isn't just about my own, the life that I'm growing, but it's about every young person or every person that I get to meet with and connect with, and hopefully we leave footprints on each other that can empower each other to step into whatever's next.
It is artist Madison Connors from Yali Creative, who you're probably aware of. She does some brilliant work. She just released this as part of an exhibition or a series, but you can buy her prints. Yeah, she's come up with some. I mean, she's got a lot of her theming is around her pregnancy and birth and children. So I've been using her artwork on the back of my screen most of this week. Absolutely incredible stuff. I wanted to, hey, by the way, listeners, I don't have any Daily Dollop of Daz today because I've got to leave at about 20 past 6. So this show, unfortunately, today won't go till 9 o'clock. And I should have warned you at the start. But everyone wasn't here. So Shantelle, I want to steal a few more minutes off you, if I can.
Yeah, please.
Hey, I was there at the National NAIDOC for Sports Person of the Year. It's an incredible honour. Maybe not as incredible as all honours that are going around, but certainly you also won Sports Person of the Year for the Victorian NAIDOC. Is that right? You've won both?
Yep.
I wanted to talk about what does that mean to an Indigenous person to be recognised by Indigenous people in a field that, you know, you've won medals before, you've won world championships, but there is differences when your community acknowledges you. What was that like?
Look, I think almost every award that I've won or grant that I've been given, I've self-nominated for. And I used to tell my sister, I was like, right, I've nominated myself for this. You're the one who's nominated me for it. People will call you, because I knew very early into my career that I needed to be able to have an evidence base to validate what I was doing. Like, my voice has always been there and the determination, but being Indigenous and being a fair-skinned Indigenous woman is very complex. Aboriginality is very complex, and that's both within our own communities and it's within the world. So for me, it was like, okay, I need to build not only for myself, but almost to validate to others that I had the right to be in these rooms or in these spaces. And that's really hard to sit with, that you're constantly always trying to prove yourself good enough. But so I spoke with a lady last week, and she said the way she introduced me was, Shantelle will knock on your door gently. She'll ask politely, but if you say no and it's a room she needs to be in, she'll kick it in, but she'll kick the door in so hard that she leaves an archway so you can't put the door back. And she does that. And she does that so that those who come after her can walk through the door. And I was like, and I was sitting there and I was like, do I not own that, or do I own that? And I'm like, actually, that's what I've always done.
Yeah.
And yeah, so now it's about owning all of that and kind of bringing it all together, because what we do matters for those who come next, or even those who stand beside us. But when I got invited to the NAIDOC Awards in 2016, I was like, oh, what's going on here? Maybe I've been invited to be a guest speaker. And it's funny, when I won my first world title, it didn't have any ripple effects. Like, yeah, okay, besides people liking my stuff on Facebook, like, even in my own family, like, no one really threw a party for me, or no one, like, it was no kind of big acknowledgement or celebration of it, both on a personal or a professional level, besides the normal kind of congratulations type stuff. And my coach, probably the biggest moment was that my coach graded me to the next belt up. He's like, nah, you've achieved the best level that you can, so you're ready for the next level up.
Right.
And that's probably, to answer an old question, that's probably, people always say, oh, when's it going to be enough? For me, it's not about being enough anymore. This is who I am. Like, I'm always the type of person to lean into what's next. Like, what are the opportunities if I keep kind of leaning into my own curiosity and my own kind of need to kind of keep pushing myself. And when I got the award from Lydia Thorpe and Annie Pam Pedersen, they told me that the award hadn't been in action for quite a number of years, but when they had seen me win, so when I won the second world title, I was so proud that I stood up on the stage with the Aboriginal flag, and it almost went viral. It went viral for my level, and to see the reaction of other people, like other women, our youth and stuff, I was like, that was validation. But then to stand in front of someone like Annie Pam and Lydia was so powerful, and it gave me this determination to keep going. It gave me this strength to go, this matters, our community values what I do, and it's worth it. And then Annie Pam sat with me the next year and she goes, you need to nominate for the national one. And I said, Aunt, I haven't done enough, like I'm not ready for that level. And she just looked at me, and she doesn't physically hit you, but she verbally and spiritually just smacks you up the back of the head with that look. Yeah. And she's got this grace and presence. For those that don't know Annie Pam, she's 5 foot nothing, in her 70s, runs marathons, and is just so staunch. But she holds her space with this level of grace and elegance to her. But there's a strength, and she loves everyone. Like, she'll call you out on your bullshit, but she'll nurture you to understand what you need to be doing. And that's the gift of our culture and our ancestors, is we don't need the answers. Like, we just need to be doing what we're doing. And then when we need to look at what's next, we'll find that guidance from those who are around us. And then, so when I won my third world title in 2018, I was like, okay, I think I've done enough to qualify for this. And Annie Pam nominated me and put my name forward, and we put the application together. And me, real docile, this is how I can be really naive. For a person who does what I do, I can be really naive. And I got the phone call from I was actually at a KGI Real Camp when I got the phone call from the natal committee, and they're like, oh, you need to be available on these dates. And anyway, she's like, oh yeah, you're one of the finalists. And then I wasn't sure whether I'd heard her say you're the finalist or you're one of the finalists. And I said to the kids, there's like 30 KGI kids there, I'm like, I think I've won, but I'm not sure. So let's celebrate. But then when I got to the awards that night, I took my two of my sisters with me, and they were in the audience, and I was sitting with, real shame job, I was sitting next to Samantha Harris. And I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I'm sitting next to Sam Harris. And I went to take a photo of her name tag to send to my daughter, and she came along and saw me doing it, and I lied. I turned around and lied and said, oh, my daughter's a big fan, and I just wanted to take a photo to prove to her. And then afterwards, later on the night, I said, no, it wasn't my daughter, it was me. And then I was sitting with all these amazing people in this space and going, because it's funny, as a black fella, as an individual, you can't get tickets to the National NAIDOC Awards because it's all bought up by corporate Australia.
That's
so
right.
There's this balance of going, is this really for our people, or is this more to tick boxes to go for that elite level to come together? So there was all this complex of emotions, but then to hear my name called, that I was the award winner, I was legitimately, like, I was shocked. My sister screamed, and I'm sitting there. I didn't have a speech prepared or anything. So when I walked up to the stage, I just said what was on my heart, like, because I knew that this wasn't mine, it was ours. Like, I take the actions and I step into those arenas, but it's because of those who have come before me. It's those who have influenced me, and it's for those that I'm fighting for. So in that moment, it's funny, like, even when I've won my world titles, there's all this stuff going on, and it's like time slows down, but I'm very grateful for the moment, but I'm already going, what can I use this for? What's next?
Yeah, I was on it. I've told you this many times. I knew where Samantha Harris was too. Quite a stunning lady. And that's how I noticed you there. I'm like, what's Shantelle doing here? This is cool. Cool, I know someone. Other than because it was very corporate and not a lot of very different than Victorian ball, which we had a few weeks beforehand. But yeah, I was looking around. This is kind of a little bit too corporate for me. Hopefully, some ties start getting loosened and the heels come off because that's the fun of it. But it was very serious. But I think I was looking at Samantha, going, "Cool, that's Samantha Harris," and I was like, "And the winner of the national sports is Shantelle Thompson." And I was looking at your face. You're like. Yeah. It was so good. Our table went nuts. Nuts because we had some people in there that knew you quite well, and and you spoke so well for someone that didn't prepare a script. It is an art form to speak like you did, and it's not that easy, but you did incredibly well. And
I think that's my gift, though, Troy, is that when I try to speak from a script, it doesn't work. But when I just trust that whatever's in my heart will come out, and it'll be what is needed to be said in the moment. And I did have a bit of what Brene Brown calls a vulnerability hangover afterwards, and going, our kids need to be held accountable to their own responsibility. I was like, is that like, how's that gonna react? But the amount of people that have come to me afterwards, like a few years later, and said, that was the best speech of the night, or it really hit them. And what I realized was it has a corporate feel, but there's still our mob there. Like it's just the elite level mob trying to bring the two worlds together. And I realized that I was so comfortable in my community setting that to be in this setting, it had that corporate feel, but our mob's there. And to see the Canberra elders taking over and the traditional people, and to see the way our mob kind of Shelley Ware and Rebecca was there, and just to see these mob and going, no, these mob are still the ones that chuck their heels off. And then at the back, all the award winners and the natal committee, it was like, nah, this is our space still. We're just navigating new levels every time.
Yeah, and it was a nationally televised event, so you couldn't help but go, okay, well, fair enough. It's got to be polished enough. So when are the cameras off? Just tell me when the cameras off. Hey, Shantelle, thank you so much for joining me this morning. And it was super last minute, but I like I said to you before the show today, I love your let's do it. Let's do it attitude. And it's something that you remind me of yesterday that I wrote down. Action, and this is Juanita Bonnie who spoke yesterday. She mentioned too many people try and work out how it's going to look and be inactive, and they do all the research. And she said action brings clarity. And I think you're a perfect example, a shining example of that. And I think your women's programs that you're going to bring are going to show that. It's going to be very, very effective.
Look, all I can say to anyone that's thinking of doing something or has something calling to them in their heart, if you have the calling and you know the next step, some people need a map.
Yes.
I've read this book and Juanita helped me clarify this as well, but I read a book and it was called the Creative Calling or something like that. It's on one of my bookshelves, and it says you need a compass, and a compass is you just need to know where that next step is, or the kind of the direction you're going in. You don't know where it's going to lead you, but to have the courage to go, this is actually what I want to do, and I don't know how it's going to work out. I don't know I know the what and the why, and sometimes you don't even know the what, you just know the why, or you've got this feeling. And that's all any of my achievements have. When I sit with kids and I say, look, the story you're about to hear, and I don't show my medals until last. If anything, I show a video of me getting dumped on my head. There's video of me fighting in Africa getting dumped on my head. There's video footage from Tokyo where I got face planted by a 17-year-old. And I had a 17-year-old boy say to me the other day, he goes, Auntie Shantelle, how good can you be if you're showing us videos of you getting bashed and dumped on your head? And I said, oi, cheeky one. I said, come and sign up to the gym and I'll show you how good I can be after I drop this baby. And he's sitting there and he's kind of looking at me and he's like, is she serious? And I'm sitting in a school talking like this. And I said, Bub, the reason I show you is because I don't need to show myself winning. I don't have that ego where I've got to walk around with my world titles around my neck. I said, but it's important for you to see people getting back up again. I said, but understand this, you or anyone else step to me and push me, I'll lay it all out, because I stand in my truth to go, everything I've done has come from hard work, battling through my own self-doubt and vulnerability, through other people's judgment, while leaving my babies at home to go and chase these things so that I can give them a better life, show them what's possible. But then we use that work to help others. And that's the advice I can give to anyone is, Juanita is right. action leads to clarity. And sometimes you have this idea and you start to act it out and it doesn't look like what we expect it to look like. But if you've got the courage to follow it through, it'll unfold itself, whether it is what you're meant to be doing, but it'll lead to the next step.
Throw away the map, follow your compass. Epic.
Follow your heart.
As said by Shantelle Thompson, thank you so much. I got to roll because I got to cut this story short today. This show short because I usually play till 9, but I have to go do this annoying job. But I'm so glad I squeezed you in, and I'm so glad that we're listening to you instead of listening to Daz. Daz is annoying. Nah, it's not Jay. Thank you, Shantelle, for joining. Hey, thanks, Shantelle. Have a good day, and yeah, once again, thanks for coming on the show so early in the morning, and I appreciate your time more than anything.
Thank you to all the listeners, and thank you for always creating a beautiful, safe space, because the stuff I said live today, I haven't shared those tidbits and whatnot. Like, I'll share it with kids in safe spaces, but that's the sort of space you create. Good. It's safe for me to show up and hope that someone gets something from it. So thank you for that, and thank you for honoring women and creating this space. Yeah, it's not enough, but it's the best I can do as a privileged male. It's a start, and but see, that's the challenge, right? People think that it's not enough, but that's where you got to let the ego go and all the, oh my God, there's so much that needs to be done. It's about doing what you can with what you have and where you are and with your resources. That way, it's more powerful. It has more depth, but also it stops burnout, because that's what I'm learning as a mum, is going, what can I do that's going to have depth and impact, but allows me to show up to all the spaces that I need to be in. And as Aboriginal people, we got a lot of spaces we've got to show up to, but we also still got to show up and do our own work, because that never stops. So it's not about doing more. It's about it's more important who you're being rather than what you're doing. But when you are in the doing, it's like doing with intent and depth, and you're going to leave more of an impact than you are if you were doing 100,000 things.
Hey, also, Bob, before we go, you did have some comments. You can't see it on the chat. Shelley, you incredible woman. As a mum, I can relate deeply. As a woman, you inspire me to keep strong and tuned in. Thank you so much for sharing your story. Deb, you are so inspirational, sis. Stacey Piper just jumped on. Gosh, you're amazing, Shantelle. Love your honesty. Strong warrior woman who has inspired me to be in my warrior today. Shantelle Thompson, the Barkindji Warrior. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Troy.
No worries.
Thank you, everyone.